Welcome to the Intensely Positive Podcast. Your host, Kelvin P. Ringo. Preset your mindset, make every day count, and make positivity your way of life. Are you ready?
Let's just do this.
Good morning, you. Kelvin here, back with another Intensely Positive Podcast, and I think a great treat for you this week. But we'll get to that in a minute. I just want to share a little bit of my life with you for the past week. I've had a great week. My daughter came into town on Father's Day, that was last Sunday, with her husband and my youngest grandson. And I figured she'd be here for a day or so just to be nice to dear old dad. And she was here for like 4 days. Okay, really, she went to Niagara Falls. They went to Niagara Falls for a day or so, but their stuff was still here, so that counts. And then they came back, and we collected baby boy, who is my youngest son, Michael J. And then we went to the theater to see Central Intelligence with Kevin Hart and The Rock. And I've got, okay, it was crazy. It's a seriously funny movie. I tried not to laugh. I really do, because I haven't always liked Kevin Hart's stand-up and stuff. But this movie was hilarious. And my daughter laughed so hard and so loud, I thought they were going to kick her out of the theater. That's how bad that was. So if you need a good laugh, I highly recommend Central Intelligence. PG-13, they say. Yeah, PG-13. That's what it said. I just checked. So anyway, so what do we got in store for you this week? Anxiety. What is it? Can you cure it? We're about to find out as I interview Ms. Peg Haust Arliss, holistic psychotherapist, about her new book, Anxiety Breakthrough, Breakout of Fear and Breakthrough to Freedom. Awesome book. Enjoy this interview, and we'll catch you on the other side. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Kelvin P. Ringo, Prince of Positive, coming to you live. Well, it's live when I'm doing it from Liverpool, New York, right here in Liverpool, New York, where my mantra is, when you master your mindset, you master your life. And I have a special treat for you today. Instead of just listening to me, you get to hear from another awesome friend of mine. And I'm pleased to have with us today my good friend, Peg Haust Arliss, holistic psychotherapist. And we're going to be talking about her new book, Anxiety Breakthrough, Breakout of Fear, Breakthrough to Freedom. Good morning, Peg. How are you today?
Good morning, Kelvin. So happy to be here. Thank you.
I have been looking forward to this for a long time. You and I have been friends for a good long time, as a matter of fact. We started back in, I think it was 2011 when you walked into my studio for your headshots, and I think the room is still glowing, actually, from the energy that you brought to the place.
Yes, that was 5 years ago. I can't imagine that. Oh my God.
And you look the same age. I can't understand it. So whatever magic you've got, we get to keep. But that was a great experience myself, even the session that we had there and the chats that we had at the time. So, and it appears you've done a lot since then.
Yeah, looking back, I can see that. And sometimes it's hard to remember that, but looking back, yeah, I guess I have, huh?
So when we first met, now at that time, I don't think you were a certified psychotherapist. Is that correct? You were a counselor, and you counseled on families and relationships, but were you all the way to the psychotherapist stage at that point?
Yes. Actually, I've been a psychotherapist since 1999.
Wow.
Yes, it was only in 2006 I opened my own private practice.
Okay.
And it wasn't until 2007 or 8 that I began to transition into a quote unquote holistic psychotherapist. So it's been a journey. It's been a growing experience for me.
So yeah, when you first started talking about being a holistic psychotherapist, that got my attention because I hadn't actually heard those two words put together. I didn't know that you could actually do that. So give me, if you would, A lot of people, I'm sure, have a concept of what holistic is. But as far as your practice is concerned, as far as your philosophies are concerned, give me a little bit on what you consider to be holistic.
Right, because that means different things for different people, right?
Right.
So for me, when I call myself a holistic psychotherapist, it simply means that I take a approach that looks at mind, body, and spirit. And for me, that means when you're working with me, we're going to look at mind. So first, we're going to do mindset. We're going to look at how you're thinking and how that is affecting how you feel. And then we're going to look at, and it's not like a 1, 2, 3, it's all kind of incorporated.
Mm-hmm.
And body, this is what traditional psychotherapists I saw was missing. They weren't looking at, health and wellness and what you were eating and things like that, because what sparked that for me is I started to notice that my clients were really excelling at the mindset piece. I would teach them mindset skills. I'm a cognitive therapist, so we would really dig our heels into the cognitive piece, and they were making great strides. But I noticed they were sick. They were complaining about, feeling tired, and they had health conditions, and these health conditions kept them from really feeling their best. Mm-hmm. And I also noticed that, some of the things with anxiety and mood issues were affected by what they were eating and things. But I couldn't talk to them about that because I wasn't credentialed to do so. So that was the turning point for me, and why I wanted to be a holistic therapist, so I could address this with my clients, because I knew it was the missing piece. And so therefore I went and did my certification in holistic health coaching with the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, and then again most recently with the Vegetarian Health Institute. So now I can at least, put that hat on with my clients and start to look at that with them. And then the spirit part for me is, it's everything. It's life. It's the joy of life. What feeds your soul, what feeds your spirit. So that could mean relationships, and that could mean, dreams and goals and ambitions you have, and spirituality, of course, would fall into that. And so that's where spirit comes in for me. So when I'm working with somebody, I want to look at that whole picture.
What's first?
The first thing I tend to do is mindset, because I think it's the seed, because if you're trying to work on your health, if you don't have a good mindset, it's really difficult. Now, if you're not healthy, it's really difficult to do the work with your mindset, but I still lean toward the mindset first.
And I kind of do too. As a matter of fact, my whole thing is mindset. Well, you know what I do. So I talk to people about life, mindset all the time, because, but for the longest time, I didn't give, I think, probably enough weight to the potential of actual issues like clinical depression, for instance. And I've gotten into some heated arguments from time to time over, depression versus, we can't do that because, the mindset won't work because we have the depression issue. And so one of the questions I had in looking through your book is you talk about breaking out of anxiety, but a lot of the stuff that you seem to say about anxiety, I have had associated, to me with clinical depression. Can you give us, is there a difference between anxiety and clinical depression?
Great
or
question.
Depression in general?
Yes, great question. So anxiety and depression often go hand in hand, but they actually are very different feelings, very different emotions. And so taking the word clinical out for a second, let's just talk about the difference between anxiety and depression.
Okay.
Anxiety is an emotion that's usually very high energy and fast. It's future paced. It's future oriented. So when we're
okay, one more time, say that again.
Yeah, anxiety is a very different emotion than depression, although they often go hand in hand.
Okay.
Anxiety is more future focused.
All right.
It's about what if, and we're setting our fire alarm off and we start to feel anxious. We start to feel that intensity in our body. So that's anxiety versus depression. And feeling depressed is just the opposite, really. It's usually past focused and more slow. When somebody feels depressed, you imagine they're feeling sad and they're moving slowly and they have low energy. Whereas anxiety, man, they're nervous wreck and I'm going a mile a minute and I'm pacing the floor. So they're very different. Yeah.
I wish I could see the video. That was a great picture right there. It's a holy smoke.
Yeah, so that's the difference between, does that make sense? The difference between
Yes,
depression and anxiety?
it does.
And they often go hand in hand. And for me, and so I ask about both. I always assess for both. And when I ask people who are coming to see me for anxiety, I ask them if they're feeling sad or depressed. And sometimes they'll say yes. And oftentimes they'll say yes because, and then I have this intuitive feeling because it's depressing to be anxious, isn't it? Yes. And they just resonate with that so much. Like they never felt depressed before, but since struggling with anxiety for so long, it's depressing to feel anxious. So even though they're very different emotions, they often go hand in hand.
Wow. All right. So, that clears that up a lot for me. And I'm asking you a bunch of general questions because I think it's important for listeners to understand the person behind the book before we actually get to the book. Incredible book. As a matter of fact, I actually read it from cover to cover, and I'm shocked because you've packed so much into this. It's just a little over 100 pages for this book, and I was like amazed, and I kept going through it, and I kept having all these questions in my mind, and I'd read something, then I'd have a question, and then a page and a half later, you'd answer the question. I'm like, oh, and now she's reading my mind. Oh, this is really great. So I'm going to get to talk about the book itself in just a second, but I just need to do this. Now, you said that you didn't start out in a holistic way. You said you started to be holistic at several years after your practice started. Did I understand that correct?
Yes, yes. But interestingly, I always had that mindset. It always bothered me when I worked, before I had my private practice, I worked many years for the county in a therapist role. And it always bothered me back then that this concept of disorders and anxiety disorder and labels. So even way back then, it bothered me, these labels that people would get placed with and the just people calling anxiety a disorder. And so it was only, it was very natural that I went into that role because that's how I have always felt. But I never knew.
It's been, and your book is green, but no. That's awesome. And because I was wondering about that too, because you're classically trained as a psychotherapist also, right?
Yeah, a licensed clinical social worker, psychotherapist, yes,
Okay.
and a certified cognitive therapist, yes.
All right. So, and do they teach, so in your practice, can you prescribe medication?
No, that is for MDs. So the MD that specializes in medicine for mental health would be a psychiatrist.
Okay.
And a psychologist is a PhD trained practitioner, but they can't prescribe either. Only an MD can, and that is a psychiatrist.
Good. All right. I have that. So you are now. Let me. I can't go through all your certifications here, but okay. So you're a licensed clinical social worker. You're a licensed psychotherapist. You're a certified health coach, and you also did just regular, quote unquote, what is regular life coaching prior to that. What are your other specialties that you sought the training for?
Oh my gosh. So, yeah.
So if the list is too many, we'll just put them in the show notes.
Umbrella, right? It's like an umbrella. I have this addiction to growth. I am such a learner, and I'm growing all the time. So I've just kind of collected. It's like collect all these certifications, but the main ones are: I'm a trained psychotherapist, right? I'm a licensed clinical social worker, cognitive therapist, and holistic life health coach. So those are my three things. And under those big umbrellas, I've been trained in NLP and vegan life coaching and cognitive therapy I already mentioned.
Okay, tell us a little bit about your NLP or NLP itself, because I think a lot of people have probably heard that term, but they don't actually realize what that is. And you do incorporate that into your therapy, correct?
I do. Neuro-linguistic programming, NLP. So when I was introduced to that when I was turned on to Tony Robbins, although I didn't, he never mentions NLP when you see him work. Mm-hmm. But when I saw his first video, I was like, oh my God, I have to know this. I have to learn that. So I looked up Chloe Madonis because I recognized that name, because with the history of psychotherapy, I knew Chloe Madonis's name, who was a world-renowned psychotherapist. So I Googled her and found that she was doing a training, because she was working with Tony Robbins. They had paired together to bring training in strategic intervention. And so I was like, I have to be a Tony Robbins coach, because, oh my God, I want to be able to make change for my clients like he does. It's amazing. So found Chloe Madonis. She happened to have a training herself individually in California, and I was there. And that was in 2009, I think. Okay. And then I said, I told her, as I was training with her, I wanted to be a Tony Robbins coach and learn how to do the work that he is doing with people. Mm-hmm. And she's like, no, wait. We're developing a coaching program, Tony and I. And I'm like, you're kidding. Well, forget it. I'll go that route then. So, because I love Chloe Madonis too, and they were pairing together and they were creating their own coaching program.
Right.
So that's how I became an RMT coach, Robbins Madonis coach. And so in that coach training program, that's when I was introduced to NLP. Okay. And strategic intervention, and that really turned up my volume as a therapist, big time, and personally. Yes. I always say that cognitive therapy, 0 to 10, with my own anxiety issues, cognitive therapy took me from 0 to 9.5.
Wow.
And then that was great. I became a certified cognitive therapist because I went from 0 to 9.5. I thought 10 at the time. But when I learned RMT, that just went right through the roof there, or blasted through that wall. That wow. One little, yep. And so then that's why I became that.
Okay. Well, we should probably get to the book itself. But there's one other piece, because in this book, and the significant thing about this book for me is that this book is a product of your own life. You yourself suffered with extreme anxiety, and you, for lack of a better term, cured yourself from this. You overcame this condition on your own. Is this correct?
Yes.
Okay, so
with help from my own research. I searched cognitive therapy. I was in college at the time, so I got turned on to cognitive therapy. That was the beginning. And, found some self-help books, and just did my own work.
That's amazing. That's the amazing part for me, because I meet so many people who say, I can't change, I can't do this, I can't help it. And I always want to, because I love Tony Robbins. I started listening to him like shortly after he wrote Unlimited Power. And, he's one of the 3 books that changed my life, right? So it's amazing. But you went in here, and I like the way your book, because you start talking about your individual issues and what they what they were doing to you, and you use this metaphor. You call it the anxiety prison, which I thought was amazing. And talk to us a little bit about the anxiety prison.
Oh,
your perspective.
So anxiety state prison. My whole book is using that metaphor. I'm breaking out of anxiety prison, because that's what it feels like. And my life was so small, becoming smaller and smaller. And it all started with panic attacks. So what happens is and your listeners might relate to this if you're struggling with anxiety, is you have a panic attack and you don't know what's happening to you. And that is such a scary thing that you are afraid to do anything, because you're afraid of another panic attack, because you don't understand why it happened in the first place, or even what it was. You often think it's a heart attack, or there's something wrong with you physically. So many people go to the ER and they have to go to the emergency room, and what's wrong with me? And they have all these tests done, and then they're told it's anxiety, and they're like, what? But you don't feel like you can control it. So your world gets very small. And my world got very small. There was a time I couldn't drive. And then there was a time I couldn't ride in a car. Fortunately, not at the same time. And
that was good. That was a plus.
But some people do have that at the same time. They can't drive or ride in a car. Some people are stuck in their home. And waiting in lines and going into stores and shopping and everything that makes life fun and living. And so that was the point that I had gotten to. But it all started with a history of childhood anxiety with public speaking. That's how it all started for me.
And I love public speaking. So luckily I don't have that anxiety. Some people who've heard me talk think I should have it, and so I'd shut up sometime. But I don't like that. So tell me about that piece. Starting with the public speaking. So what kind of issues did you have with that?
Well, long ago, it all started with show and tell in kindergarten.
Oh, really? Seriously?
Yes. And so that's how it started for me. So I just all through high school, all through grade school and high school, I just refused to do public speaking. Well, I did try it again in 7th grade, and that was just horrifying. So I ended up asking the teachers if I could have alternate assignments, and that worked. And I'm like, ooh, that's a good idea, alternate assignments. And they were very accommodating. So I never had to do it. So I never went to college, which was my whole dream since I was 17, is to be a therapist since I was 17, but I never fulfilled that dream because of this public speaking phobia. So then
you're over that now.
I'm over that now. But then see what happened was I decided to go to college, do or die, when I turned 30. And then my anxiety, quote unquote, disorder really accelerated. And that's when the panic, quote unquote, disorder began, when I went to college, because I had been suppressing this public speaking phobia my whole time, and I wasn't going to get away with getting out of it in college. So then I became extremely panic ridden. And that's why I'm an anxiety specialist today. But I was originally going to be a counselor when I was 17, because I wanted to work with domestic violence victims. That was my original, when I was that young, what I wanted to do and why I wanted to become a counselor to begin with. Then it turned into, so I love doing that still too, but it turned into this because of that.
Excellent. So now all those dreams are in play.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely.
Excellent. Now, you make a point in the book at some point, and I'm not looking at it specifically, that you don't define, well, you talk a lot about anxiety, but you don't really define anxiety as an order. As a disorder.
Correct.
You said anxiety is not a disorder, and you start talking about the fight or flight response and how we develop the anxiety and stuff in the first place. Give us a little bit on that, because I think a lot of people don't understand that. I've heard about, lizard brain from, lots of other people out there, but so talk to us about how anxiety originates or what it does to us, because you say this is a normal response in human beings that hasn't transitioned from caveman days or something. So talk to us about that, please.
Yeah, so that's the whole reason I wrote the book to begin with. I originally wanted to write a book, and it was originally going to be just a workbook, because there, like I said in the book, there's a lot of self-help workbooks out there that are awesome and amazing, and I use them myself, like I said earlier, to help myself. But they were all calling anxiety a disorder, and that bothered me. And so my book, I talk about how anxiety is not a disorder. It's just an emotion. It's an emotion. It's a necessary, instinctual safety mechanism that we are hardwired with, through evolutionary times, which is a very good thing. So when we're in a dangerous situation, our fight or flight, it's called fight or flight response, will trigger, and then it puts us into action. And so that's a very good thing. The problem with anxiety is it gets triggered when there is no danger. So when we perceive danger, then in the book I use set your fire alarm off. Mm-hmm. When we perceive danger, we'll set our fire alarm off, and then our natural instinctual fight or flight mechanism will kick in. But we don't, but we're not understanding that. We think it's what's happening to us. So I help people to understand that you're completely fine, you're completely normal. You're just setting your fire alarm off when there's no real fire, when there's no real danger. Just knowing that for me in the beginning was like, oh my gosh, thank you. Just knowing that was so relieving for me in the beginning. Just knowing that I wasn't crazy, because that's what it feels like, and that I wasn't going to die. Just knowing that, oh my gosh, I'm setting my fire alarm off when there's no fire. That makes so much sense.
What is it that sets off these alarms? Because the people that I have seen who had anxiety, some of the stuff that cripples them is stuff I consider to be just like, oh, what was the big deal about that? But I know that I can't use my perception, because for whatever reason, I wasn't afraid of that. No, I'm afraid of something. I'm afraid of snakes. My mother was afraid of snakes. I know why I'm afraid of snakes, because every time my mother saw a snake, she would scream, holler, and all kinds of stuff, and she couldn't even watch one on television. So
my mother's exactly the same.
We stay away from snakes, Kay. I don't care. Little green ones, they can look like earthworms. To me, it's a boa constrictor. Don't care. It's a snake. I'm not bothering that, but I know where that fear comes from. So when that shows up for me, I just get out of its way.
Yes.
But I don't realize, I don't think I have any other fears that just come over me for that I'm not aware of. So, but for the people who have that happen, you talk about the fire alarm going off. What do you do then? When the fire alarm goes off and there's no fire, what's the next step?
So once you realize that, right? Oh, I just want to say, my mother has the exact same fear and phobia. That's so funny. But it's exactly the same though, Kelvin, because public speaking, you love, and I never liked, and snakes you hate, and snakes never bothered me. So that's what I'm talking about. I talk about perceived danger, you are perceiving danger with snakes. I am perceiving danger with public speaking. And so because I had a bad experience with public speaking, now that's kind of like hardwired there, and I get re-triggered, right? Mm-hmm. That memory lives in our cells. It's like cellular memory, right? It's like in our neural pathways. And so that's important to remember too. It's kind of like living in a memory, and it keeps getting re-triggered. And so what do you do? Well, first step is awareness. Number one, I always start with education. I have and again, that can alleviate, like, for me, it alleviated like 90% of my anxiety, just knowing that I was okay and I wasn't crazy, I wasn't going to die. So awareness is number one. And then I have a whole, toolbox full of strategies to help get over this pattern of behavior, because that's what it really is. It's a pattern. It's an emotional response, and an emotional response is a pattern, something that we're doing. That's why I don't consider it a disorder, because it's just an emotion, and an emotion is something that we do. And I explain all that. And then it's about breaking those patterns once we're aware. And we can do that really simply. So driving anxiety, for example. Mm-hmm. If I get a little nervous driving, or if I'm helping a client, I just tell them, distract yourself, turn on the radio, talk to somebody who's with you. And the most interesting way, and kind of sounds weird, but just smile. Just smile. When you smile, then you're sending a signal to your brain that everything's okay. Because if you can picture yourself, if you're afraid of driving or afraid of anything, you can see your face is probably tense and tight. Mm-hmm. You're probably clenching the wheel and you're all tense. So that is sending a signal to your brain that there is danger, perceived danger, right? So now you've just clicked off your fire alarm. So if you just simply smile, mm-hmm. take a big deep breath and smile, you're literally sending a signal to your brain that everything's okay. So I tell people, smile even though you don't have anything to smile about. Yeah. Because you're going to instantly, calm that system down. Okay. So these are the kind of things I help my clients initially do. Number one, be aware that it's the thought-mood connection, that you're setting your fire alarm off with your thoughts, thought-mood connection. And then I talk to them about how anxiety is an emotion that you're actually doing, and it's practical, and you know this, but we're not conscious of it. So I help them bring this to their conscious awareness. And then it's a matter of breaking your patterns and practicing, and learning. This is a big part. Learning not to be afraid of the feelings, mm-hmm. because that's what we do. We're afraid of the feelings in our body, and then we run from it. And so I help people to recognize and realize that those symptoms aren't anything to be afraid of, because they happen very naturally when there is danger and you don't make a big deal out of it. Mm-hmm. It makes sense. So don't be afraid of those symptoms because they're not dangerous. Now, that's being said, I always make sure that people have a full physical to make sure it isn't their heart or it isn't things, right? So you want to rule out medical first.
All right. And, I have recognized that when I am fearful of something, legitimately or not, that the worst part of that is not actually wanting to have that feeling. Not that I may actually, I went on a, what do you want to call it? A water slide once, many, many years ago. Only did it once, swore I'd never do it again. Right. And what happened was, well, my daughter was with me. She was quite young at the time, and my son. And we went to, I don't know, Enchanted Forest, I think it was. And I got in that water slide. You know, the one that goes all the way up and it goes swirls, down, right? Oh. Well, the top of it was open. And I get into, because I'm gullible, just understand this. I get to the top of this water slide I swore I was never going to do. And then this kid says, if you don't worry about it, if you want to slow yourself down, just lay down. Okay, you can see gullible written across my forehead. So I did that. I went down that sucker so fast that we were going around and around and around, and we were going up on the sides, and the vision I had in my mind was, I'm going so fast, I'm going to come up on the side, I'm going to zip out the front, I'm going to end up a splat in the middle of the parking lot somewhere. And that was a vision I had in my mind until I hit the big splash at the bottom and was like, oh my God, how did I get out of that? I did not come out. Let the record show that I did not come out of the water slide. Also let the record show I've never been on another water slide. Just understand that, just in case it was going to happen. But the feeling of going to the top of that thing again and getting back in that water slide, I have not overcome again. And I might one day, but the older I get, the less need. Who needs to be wet anyway?
Right.
That's a whole thing. But I understand. It's the fear of being afraid.
Yes, the fear of the fear
is a bigger problem sometimes than actually being afraid.
Yeah.
And that sets off anxiety. Yes.
Mm-hmm. All
right. Now, in your book, you talk about 3 keys to freedom.
Mm-hmm.
So, and you talk about giving them to us in the order that they came to you. So, what is? Well, I can see it here, but the readers can't. So, I'm gonna let you tell us what was key number 1.
Well,
what is key number 1?
The 3 keys are mind, body, and spirit. So freedom for your mind. So I talk about that first because, again, that was what I was trained in as a therapist, as a counselor. So, and a cognitive therapist. So mindset is my wheelhouse. So we do all the cognitive work, the thought mood connection work. Mm-hmm. So that's key number 1, freedom for your mind. Get emotionally fit, get your mindset really optimal. Okay. Then key number 2 is freedom for your body. Okay. So what are you eating? What are you not eating? We talk about food, the food mood connection. We talk about supplements. We talk about all things health, exercise, moving your body. So that's what we focus on in key number 2. And key number 3, freedom for you, I call it. And that's really freedom for your spirit. So, how are your relationships? What is the quality of your relationships? Are you contributing outside of yourself? Do you have a spiritual practice? So all those things. Do you have dreams and goals and ambitions? And so we do an exercise with the Wheel of Life where we look at each piece of that pie: finances, a career, spirituality, and I have people assess where they are. And, then that's kind of fun. And then we develop plans on where to go and how to develop that. So you can really feel fulfilled in your heart and soul. And I put relationships there because, oh my gosh, relationships are, I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but if your relationships aren't on board, if you're having trouble in your relationships, and I don't mean just romantic relationships.
Yes.
Yeah. But any relationships, then it makes life so much more difficult. Everything else is so much more stressful when your relationships aren't solid, right? So That's why it's so important, and why I talk a lot about relationships with people.
And they do. And you put in here, you talked about some of your anxiety, and you talked about dehydration triggering some of your anxieties. And I'd never heard that from anywhere. Staying hydrated. How'd you come across that?
That I came across in my health coaching practice. So when I was training at the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, we learned about food, all about eating healthy. And I learned that Americans are so dehydrated. I think the statistic was like 90% of us are chronically dehydrated. And that can bring on a lot of symptoms, fatigue. and anxiety. Why anxiety? Because when you're dehydrated, you might I think of it like a car, right? If you're low on gas,
Mm-hmm.
your car, and you're low on oil, and you haven't, got any oil in your car's not going to run well, right? So when you're not lubricating your body and you're not hydrating your everything in your body, you feel like crap. You feel low energy. You feel tired. You might have a little low glycemic feeling, and that can trigger that feeling of anxiety. Low glycemic, when your blood sugar is low.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I tell people, just drink a big glass of water when you're feeling tired or a little off. Have a huge glass of water, wait a few minutes, and see if you feel better. Because what typically people want to do is, oh my God, I'm nervous, or I'm feeling dizzy, just tired, and just have some water first. Drink some water, because maybe you're dehydrated, so.
And I never would have thought of that in 100,000 years. That not having enough water would do that to me. So the sense that I get from looking at your book, is that, most people could take care of an awful lot of their fears and anxieties simply by going through the steps that you have in this book.
Yes, it's not.
And eliminate you, because it's not just a book, it's a workbook. So they're going to read about stuff, then they're going to do things to help fix that. They're going to actually take some action. Like you have 3 parts here, prepare for your escape, you talk about. And there's a exercise in the beginning of the book. Now, one of the things I liked about this book is you never say you have to do this. You never say, if you don't do this, you're going to fail miserably. You say things like, this is really important. Because if you don't figure this part out, if you don't know what it is you want out of life, you won't know what you get at. This fits integrally into the next part. When I was going through the food part, you never said, give up meat. You came close. You came close. And one of the other things you do is you talk about working incrementally. You talk about, because, the mind doesn't like to give up anything. I understand that. You and I have studied some of the same people. Tony Robbins, I fell in love with him like years ago. And there was a time in my life that I didn't get in my car unless something from Tony was playing. And I love that. But you talk about, if you don't want to give it up, cut back. Or if you don't want to, completely change your habit, add this in, do it incrementally so you don't overload yourself. So tell us the importance of that process. I might have just done it, but you tell us the importance of just not feeling like you have to change your entire life all at the same time right now. Right.
So it's about what you'll get out of it, what you put into it. And I am very, I allow people to, and I believe that people should, go with their own pace. And I'm right there with them. So I start where they are, and I take that journey with them wherever they're starting. Some people are already, way beyond, some people are already eating healthy, but they want to do better. Some people have no idea even where to start. So I want to start where people are and tell them that it's okay. It's okay to start where you are, and it's okay to, I don't want them to feel overwhelmed, and we'll just go baby steps.
And there's a lot, and you give so much in this book. I need to take a lesson, because you're not nearly as wordy as I am when I write about stuff. I want to cover the 3 areas here a little bit more and have you comment on those. Obviously, the first one, when you start talking about, I think one of the things I got to say here is that there is a worksheet for everything that you talk about.
Yeah.
It's not like, well, you need to do this. You have specific questions that you ask them. You have specific things you go, you want to know what their mindset is. You want to know how their spirit is feeling. And you have ways for them to record all that information and assess it. So the first one is figuring out where they are. That's what we do when we're going to take any trip, right? Where are we right now? That's what our internal GPS is for. And the next part is where they want to go, how they want to go. And another thing I like about what you incorporated here, it's like, how will you feel when you get there? You have us look at, how is it we want to feel when we're at our perfect spot in life? What's that going to feel like? Mm-hmm. Right. And I like that you talk about affirmations, but so between, how's that going to feel and affirmations on fire cards, talk to us about those two for me.
Affirmations on fire. Yeah. So that's why people get stuck, because they get all motivated and it feels like I want to do this because it's based on pain. Mm-hmm. Right? And they feel like they got to do something because, there's a pain point. So then they get motivated and then they do what they got to do to, alleviate the pain. But then it stops because you get away from the pain a little bit and you start to forget how bad that was. And so you backslide or self-sabotage, as some people call it. Mm-hmm. And so having that point, I call it point A and point B, having that point A is where you're starting, the pain point. Point B is, what do you want instead? And really get specific about that and really imagine it in your mind and see it and feel it and know it and smell it and taste it and really make it real for you about what that is that you want. Mm-hmm. And then, then I have exercises like the affirmations on fire and the freedom board. So you can always keep that present for yourself. Keep it present. It's got to be present. So that's what's going to keep us moving and progressing ahead. And then the tools and strategies to fill what to do day to day, moment by moment. And that's how it kind of works. So affirmations on fire is about, I call it on fire because you got to feel it. You can't just say it. You got to feel it and you got to believe it and you got to mean it. So you say it with meaning. Mm-hmm. And even if you might not believe it right yet, you say it like you do. And then eventually you will. So that's why they're affirmations on fire. And I use them, oh my gosh, I used affirmation cards from the very beginning that was one of the tools I learned way back when and I still use. But I turned them on fire, which I didn't have then.
Yeah. So that's...
There's one thing I have to tell you, though.
Okay.
Do we have time? I got to tell you something.
Absolutely. We got as much time as you want.
There was a lesson I learned writing my story. Because at first, I wasn't going to write my story. At first, I was just going to write the workbook. Mm-hmm. But I started to notice and, recognize that the clients that were coming to me really appreciated, because I have on my website that I am an anxiety specialist because I've had a history with it. And a lot of my clients appreciated that. So that's why I added my story. Mm-hmm. Because my clients kept saying, I really appreciate that you've gone through it. So I added my story to the workbook. So the first half is my story. The second part is the workbook because of that reason. But what I didn't expect, mm-hmm. writing my story, I learned something about myself. If you do any email, forms on my email and when I write letters and when I'm writing the end of my book, my signature is Rise and Shine. Mm-hmm. I have a little sun flame as my logo. Well, that is because I found out that was the real cause of my anxiety all these years. And I really didn't realize that consciously until I wrote my story. So that is the power of story. I learned that about myself, and I encourage others to write their story because they might find some aha moments for themselves. So for me, it was always about never allowing myself to shine. That's what my anxiety has, oh my God, I'm going to cry, has always been about. When I was a little baby girl, So, I still get emotional about that.
Well, that's good. They know I'm talking to a real person now.
But that's what it's all about. It's about, never let anxiety, never let yourself dim down to that. Really let yourself shine. And that is why I put my god dang myself on the cover of my book, because I was never going to do that either. And I was never going to do that, but I did it because that's the lesson I learned from writing my story.
And it is an awesome, and it's all sunshine. Of course, I think personally I should have done the somebody else has got to be able to photograph you too, yes, that is because we're taught young that
yes.
we shouldn't do that. We shouldn't stand out. We shouldn't promote ourselves. We should, that's selfish. That's egotistical.
Right.
That's whatever, and which causes more anxiety, I think, in life than anything else. Because somebody else said, I couldn't do that.
That's right.
I'm not that smart. I'm not that special. What right do you have? Or anything like that.
Yes. Yes. So every time my anxiety showed up, I put two and two together that it was because it was me growing in some way that I thought was maybe too big. Mm. And so I said, you know what, I shouldn't put my, somebody said, you're going to put your cover, yourself on the cover. I'm like, no. Because when I had my original intent was when you took my pictures was just a little bitty picture in the back of the book. That's all I was going to do. And then after I wrote my story, I'm like, you know what? This is really uncomfortable, but I'm going to do it because I want to walk my walk. I want to, because it gives permission for other people to do the same.
Absolutely.
So that's why I did it, and it was very uncomfortable.
But it's a beautiful book. I mean, really, it makes me want to just pick it up now. Now, we haven't talked too much about your husband and everything, and there is some stuff in here about some problems in your things in your life earlier. But I met you when I met you. You already had Craig.
Yes.
You guys came to a party I had once, and you were just the most perfect couple. Now, were you past the issues at that point, or were you working through them? And that was 2011. So you guys were good then. You had worked out all the issues, and you were just that glowing couple that I'm telling you, the energy you left in my house was incredible. And matter of fact, you need to come back because I need the energy back. But he's an awesome guy, and I have seen you two together, and you just light each other up, and that's beautiful in and of itself. And so I was glad to hear you talk about him and your relationship, and your relationship coach, after all. I mean, that's a great testament to your skills, is that you actually have a happy relationship. And I've met him, so I can verify that for you. I give the stamp of authenticity on that claim. And it's very awesome. This is wonderful. If you had one piece of advice outside of buying this book, which I recommend people do, as a matter of fact, I've already bought a copy and given it to someone close to me. I won't specify who that is, because I think that I thought that the things in this book could help them, and actually it helped me going through it, because I realized some other things about me. That are good. But I mean, we've been talking for a while now. What have I missed? What is it that you want to tell people that I haven't hit upon yet, that I haven't asked you? If you just had that one thing to tell people, what would it be?
Oh, well, you're not broken. You're not defected in some way. You're not disordered. That really bothers me. And so if people can just hear that there is a way out of panic disorder, quote unquote disorder, that there is a way out of it, and you're not broken.
That is cool. Now, what is the first thing they need to do if they feel that they're in that disorder, if they're feeling that angst, that panic right now? What is the first thing you, well, let's not, well, top three, if you had to make a recommendation, which you are qualified to do, mind you, of the top 2 or 3 things that they might consider doing from this point to help get control of those emotions that they don't necessarily have control of right now, what would your recommendation be?
Mm-hmm. So I would move your body, right? Get that. I would definitely get the energy. And are we still connected?
We seem to be. I get a flash every once in a while that says internet connection is weak, but then it goes away.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay.
So I would just, number 1, know you're not broken. Know that there's nothing, that can't be helped. Number 2, not just, with your mindset, I'm all right. This will pass. I know what this is. I know what this is now. It's just anxiety. I'm going to walk it off. And I'm going to go back in. I'm going to get something healthy to eat. And I'm going to let this pass, and I'll be fine.
And I like what you said about exercise, because you don't call it exercising. You call it energizing.
Yes, energizing.
So energize yourself. Find a way to energize yourself. And what would number 3 be?
Love. Just get in your heart, and if you got kids, love up your kids. Husband, love up your partner. Love up your pets. My God, I don't know what else can calm you down better than that, make you happy better than that.
Awesome. Well, I will tell you, and there will be, show notes. As a matter of fact, your book cover will be the cover of the podcast. Anxiety Breakthrough, Breakout of Fear, Breakthrough the Freedom, Peg Haust Arliss. Awesome person, awesome therapist, awesome. Oh, and really, really, really cute. All right. Is there anything else you'd like to say? Where do we find you? Her book is available on Amazon, I know, because I bought copies off of there. Where else is it? Do you have any book signings coming up soon, or?
Yes, I have. My book is on. Yep, my book is on sale at Amazon, and also on my website. You can get a signed copy on my website. My website is peghaust.com, and you can also download a anxiety kit there, and you can download free excerpts from my book and sign up for my newsletter. So, and I'm on Pinterest and Facebook and YouTube, so you can find me everywhere. Twitter.
Peghaust.com, no spaces. That's PEGHAUST.com, and look for her. She's awesome. I guarantee it.
Thank you.
And there is no one any more intensely positive I know than Peg Haust Arliss. All right? Well, thank you so much. Have an incredible day.
You too. Bye, everybody.
We'll talk to you in a bit. All right.
That's all we've got for you this week. Thanks for listening. And if you like that episode, let me know. You can send me a note at podcast@intenselypositive.com and give us your thoughts. And in the meantime, if you've got someone else you'd like for us to interview, or something you want to know about, and I can find out who to interview about it, you can drop that note there too, and we'll see what we can do. Right now, it's been great being with you, and we'll see you next time.
Wow, that was awesome.